So if you're new to photo editing, particularly like Lightroom, but really the skills here apply to any kind of software. When you're new to photo editing, it can be quite exciting when suddenly you see all the different things you can do to change your photo, and you just start moving all these sliders around, not necessarily knowing what you're doing and thinking you're setting on something that actually looks quite good. But like with developing all skills, you develop your eye the more you edit. And the more you do photography, your eye learns and develops, and you understand what it is actually to get out of photo, but also what other people are looking for photos as well. And it's that aspect there of what other people are after is the thing that comes with time. Because we all like different stuff and we all want different things. So when we go through these common mistakes here, there are times when actually it's not a mistake, it is an intended purpose to do this because that's what the photo asks for. And that will bring me to the final mistake, which we'll share at the end. But here are some common Lightroom mistakes that I have made definitely in the past, and I still do make to this day as well, but I see loads of other people make. And the reason I'm sharing them today is just so that you are aware of them as well, especially if you're new into this game. Be aware of it, and then you'll be able to see if you're doing it. And hopefully this will stop you doing this in the future. So number one, and this made a big difference to my edits when I started doing it, is know a color palette before going into edit. When we sit down and look at a photo, there are already different colors present within that. And before you start diving in and moving things around, you should really sit down and actually have a look at what is already there. Because a lot of the time we want to capture something good in lens. We don't always, and yes, there are creative decisions we can make, but think about the photo as well. So when we talk about a color palette, there's loads of colors already present in your image. And that means there are certain ones we're going to want to accent out. And by doing this, it's going to enhance our composition a bit more. Likewise, there are certain colors maybe we want to remove because there are distractions. Or if we are going for a particular style, that is our color palette in mind. So if I'm going for a vintage style, I'm probably going to be looking at more warms and greens. If I want something that's going to be quite cold, well then I need to focus on the blues. If I want it to be quite modern and crisp, maybe I'll go down a black tone route, which means really sucking out of a lot of the colors. Going in with that in mind and knowing what your color palette is going to be will help influence you when you go down to those sliders. One of the mistakes is trying to include all the colors that are there and trying to make them all brighter, because then you just end up making the entire composition loud. Very loud and very noisy. Number two, and this is the fun one that most people agree with, is the clarity slider, but also the dehaze and the texture. But largely the clarity slider is an amazing one when people first discover it, because they just whack it up and think this is incredible, look how sharp it's making my image. However, it doesn't work for every situation. Yes, there are times when boosting the clarity works really nicely. So if we're thinking about street photography, architecture, things where we've got aggressive kind of angles and really harsh edges, clarity works quite nice. But when we have a photo that's got a lot of texture and a lot of detail in it, such as forest photos where you've got all these leaves and twigs, when we boost the clarity on that, we again end up with a very loud image. And when we're talking about a loud image that's chaotic, the reason why it's not great to look at is because we never quite know where to look. Our eyes are drawn all over the place. By actually reducing clarity on things that are high detail, like forests, like landscapes, we can reduce down all of those little details of the leaves and sticks into a bit more of a block of trees, a block of leaves, and our eyes are less distracted by that. So it's knowing that sometimes we want to pull the clarity slider in the opposite direction, even if you don't want to. But remember that when you're doing your masking, you can mask over certain bits of the image if you want to boost the clarity in those local areas. So again, if I've got a forest photo and I've got some architecture in it, overall my clarity is down, but as a mask, I'm going to go in and brush some more clarity into those areas. And again, that just helps them stand out a bit more, which brings us into our third mistake, which is not using masks. Masking makes a massive part of an image. It's really what gives it depth and atmosphere, and it's missed out a lot because people aren't really sure what to do with it. Well, follow the same editing mindset there of what is it you want to stand out? What is it you want to draw the eye to? Well, these are things that become brighter, become sharper, maybe a bit more saturated. Things that are distractions, we don't want the eyes, maybe they're a bit more darker, less contrasted. Following those two simple rules to begin with, and using that as a guideline, will help you when you start to mask. But check out some of the other videos on the channel with some examples of masking and just pinch those techniques. Number four is contrast. Over contrasting your images. And again, it's something when you get access to the curves tool for the first time, you make an S curve and it makes your image look cool because it's contrasted. But once again, does your image need to be contrasted? You got to think about that style. What is it you're trying to get across, present? What's your story? There are times where actually lifting the blacks, lowering the whites, getting that faded look. This is how you're going to get that cinematic approach. But there are times where you might need to bring a bit more light in. Well, that's where we don't want an S-curve. Maybe we pull the exposure, the midpoint up, and that's going to give us more light in the image. Really understanding how the curve tool works is going to give you a bit more knowledge of when you're going in and looking at the contrast, you're thinking about your light in the image as well. And knowing how that curve tool works is going to help you so much because it affects our colors, it affects our light, it affects the contrast. So check out that video on the channel as well. And the final and fifth mistake, which this video is kind of hinted towards, is really just not knowing what you're going in to do. And that feels like a weird thing to say, but the biggest mistake you can do when sitting down to edit a photo is just to go straight into it. You want to have like an editing mindset, and that is you ask yourself a few questions before you go into the image, which is, what have I got in it currently? What is my subject? Do I have a subject? What sort of colors are here that I can work with? Is the composition correct, or actually, do I need to cut the composition? If I got a landscape image, maybe I want to cut it down into portrait. Asking yourself these questions will actually influence your editing before you even start to move the sliders, and this stops you from making a lot of those mistakes. If you're going with a forest photo and you know I'm not going to have as much detail, then you reduce the clarity. If you're going with street photography and it's going to be uploaded to Instagram and you know you need that sharpness, then we are going to have a bit more of an S-curve and contrast in there. It's understanding where your photo is going, what its purpose is, what's actually within the file we have itself, and then working from that. Having that editing mindset will help to influence you. And now there might be times where you want to do a couple of different edits. Maybe you're stuck between two styles. That's absolutely fine. Take your file, right click, and go on Create Virtual Copy. That way you can have two different edits and you can choose which direction you want to go in. But the moment I started taking a step back and looking at my photos and really thinking, what is it I want to get out of this? That's when my editing game changed, and I stopped doing the same things all the time just because they worked on one photo, and I actually started thinking about what's the photo in front of me and adapting my techniques and adapting my style into that. So there's just a few quick tips for you today on some common mistakes with photo editing, and hopefully if you are a beginner and you're watching this video, it's just giving you a little bit of knowledge of things to be aware of. And if you're a pro and you've been doing this for a while, maybe you've seen things that you've grown and yet you no longer do, and that's giving you a bit of reassurance. But anyway, let me know down in the comments below, what are some of the common mistakes that you've done? Are there any that we've talked about today that you identified, or what's something you see quite a lot as well? Remember to check out the preset packs below. There's a couple of freebies on there where you can grab for yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.